The white walls of the apartment reflected the early morning light as Raymond Mercer moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for another day. His coffee brewed exactly 4 minutes. While he showered and shaved with military precision, the calendar on his wall bore 38 meticulously marked X's, each one bringing him closer to retirement from Coastal Women's Correctional Facility. After 30 years of service, he touched the gold wedding band, still on his finger 5 years after Marion's death, a ritual that connected him to what little life he had outside these walls. The apartment was unnaturally neat, every surface, gleaming books, perfectly aligned clothes. Precisely hung. Raymond studied his reflection in the bathroom mirror, noting the deepening lines around his eyes, the military short gray hair, the stern set of his mouth that had become permanent over decades of commanders. Respect. Raymond's sedan pulled into the staff parking lot at 5:42 a.m. Exactly 18 minutes before his shift. The familiar weight of his uniform and the rhythmic jingle of his keys provided comfort in their constancy. Other officers greeted him with respectful nods, none daring the familiarity of small talk with the man they called Rulebook behind his back. Warden Davis intercepted him in the corridor. Retirement countdown. Getting shorter. Raymond, 38 days. Sir, still figuring out those plans. Their conversation, a ritual repeated almost daily. Raymond had no plans. The structure of retirement yawned before him like an abyss into which his carefully ordered existence might disappear. The morning briefing covered 3 incidents in D Block, a minor contraband seizure and new intake assignments. Raymond absorbed the information with professional detachment, making mental notes where procedures had been followed incorrectly. His reputation for adherence to protocol was both respected and resented by younger officers, who couldn't understand his rigid devotion to rules that seemed arbitrary. Rules meant order, order meant safety, a mantra that had governed Raymond's existence. Military service prison was merely an extension of that philosophy, a controlled environment where every action had consequences, where his authority was absolute and unchallenged. Officer Jenkins appeared at Raymond's office door at precisely 10:30 a.m. "Got a new one for you, administrative detail," said, gesturing to the young woman standing beside her, medium-height, slender build with intelligent eyes that immediately set her apart from the typically defeated or defiant new arrivals. Eliza Chambers, the officer read from her clipboard, 25, former nursing student, 18 months, possession with intent. Raymond studied the woman, noting her composed posture, the way she assessed her surroundings with quiet awareness. Most inmates entered this room with either hostility or fear. This one showed neither. Something in her quiet confidence captured his attention in a way that unsettled his professional detachment. Raymond gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "Sit," his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. The woman, Eliza, moved with deliberate grace, her hands folded neatly in her lap, maintaining eye contact that neither challenged. "Submitted your file. Says you have medical office experience." Raymond began scanning the intake documents. She nodded. 3 years at Memorial. While studying nursing, I managed patient records and insurance documentation. Her voice, educated, measured, a stark contrast to the slurred street vernacular that code through the general population blocks. Raymond found himself studying her features longer than protocol dictated, noting the intelligence behind her eyes, the careful way she held herself as if maintaining dignity was an act of resistance against her circumstances. The guard arrived to escort back to her cell block, and Raymond found himself watching her departure longer than necessary. Something about her presence had disturbed the carefully maintained rhythm of his day, a small ripple across the still pond of his routine. That evening alone, in his apartment, Raymond performed nightly rituals with the same precision that characterized every aspect of his life. Yet as he lay in bed, the digital clock reading 9:30 p.m., his mind returned unexpectedly to the new inmate. In 30 years, thousands of prisoners had passed through his supervision, their faces blurring in memory. Specific details about Eliza Chambers remained clear. The careful fold of her hands, the direct gaze, the absence of the typical prison effect. Something about her had registered as important in a way that violated his professional distance. Raymond turned away from the empty half of the bed, will sleep to come. Pushing away thoughts of the woman. Something had shifted today, some small disturbance in the perfect order of his world, and in the darkness of his immaculate apartment. That thought followed him into restless sleep. The first night in years, his mind had been occupied by something other than the rigid routine that defined his existence. The administrative office fell into a rhythm. Over the following weeks, Raymond found himself watching Eliza's hands as she sorted files, The precise way she aligned papers, the careful curves of her handwriting. Unlike the hasty scrawls of other inmates, she approached each task with a focus that mirrored his own methodical nature. Her desk remained impeccably organized, even during complex filing tasks, a quality that resonated with his need for order. He noticed how she held her pen at exactly the same angle when writing, how she arranged her paper clips in perfect rows while waiting for the ancient printer to finish its labored output. Small details that would have escaped his attention with anyone else, yet with her became objects of unwavering focus. Raymond's arthritis flared during a cold snap in February, the pain making his fingers stiff as he attempted to sort through inmate medical requests. Eliza, watching from her desk, noticed his discomfort. "You're favoring your right hand, Officer Mercer," she said quietly. "I used to help elderly patients with joint pain at the hospital. May I?" Her question hung in the air, a breach of carefully maintained distance between officer and inmate. Raymond should have refused, yet found himself extending his hand across the desk. She took it gently, her fingers warm against his skin, applying precise pressure to points along his palm and wrist. "The pain technique works better with repetition," she explained, continuing to manipulate the joints with knowledgeable care. This was the first time anyone had touched him with purpose since Marion's death, the contact sending an unexpected current through his body, foreign and disturbing yet undeniably welcome. That evening Raymond began a new ritual. In his meticulous apartment, a notebook dedicated to observations about Eliza Chambers, he recorded the day's interaction, noting the pressure points she had shown him, her exact words, the way her brow furrowed in concentration as she worked on his hand. He detailed her outfit, her hair arrangement, organization system she had implemented for the medical files. The notebook became a daily journal of minutiae, increasingly focused on patterns in her behavior. Words she used repeatedly, preferences she exhibited without stating them, his documentation of her existence growing more detailed with each passing day, a professional interest. He told himself, though some deeper awareness recognized the obsessive nature of his attention. The pain in Raymond's hands persisted despite the exercises. Eliza had shown him a constant ache that worsened in the cold mornings, watching her sip water from the standard issue plastic cup. One afternoon he overheard her tell another inmate about missing proper tea, something so simple yet apparently meaningful in her previous life. The next day he brought a paper cup from the outside, a tea bag smuggled from home, and hot water from the staff room, widened at the offering, the smallest violation of protocol, the beginning of a boundary crossed. "Thank you," she whispered. The gratitude in her voice, triggering something primitive and protective in him, an unfamiliar warmth spreading through his chest. This small act of kindness, contrary to everything his position represented, felt dangerously satisfying. Surveillance cameras covered most areas of the administrative section, a necessary security measure that Raymond had always appreciated. Now, those unblinking electronic eyes became obstacles to the private moments he increasingly craved with Eliza. He began studying the coverage patterns, identifying the blind spots where conversations might occur unobserved. He rearranged furniture incrementally, creating shadows and angles where the cameras couldn't reach. A filing cabinet moved 6 inches to the left. A desk rotated 15 degrees. Changes no one would question, but that created pockets of privacy where they might speak without oversight. His 30 years of security expertise now deployed to circumvent the very systems he had once championed. Officer Delgado, younger, more casual with inmates, stopped by the administrative office more frequently than necessary. Raymond noticed his easy smiles directed at Eliza, the way he lingered asking unnecessary questions about her work. Found himself positioning his desk to maintain sightlines whenever Delgado entered, feeling a surge of irritation at the man's familiar tone. "She's here for your entertainment," Raymond finally said after Delgado's third visit. That week, "Inmates aren't for socializing." The younger officer's surprised expression revealed how uncharacteristic the comment was for the normally detached. "Raymond, reinforcements for medical records are authorized me, not through direct requests to the inmate." The protective tone in his voice barely disguised under professional concern. Late at night in his apartment, Raymond began taking Eliza's case file home, a violation of prison protocol that would have shocked his colleagues had they known he reread the details of her arrest. The character testimonials from her nursing instructors, witness statements, medical records, educational history, every document committed to memory, as if understanding the fullness of her past might explain the inexplicable pull she exerted on his present. Her life before incarceration, creating a mental image of the woman beyond the uniform, constructing elaborate scenarios of her daily routines. Her relationships, her aspirations. He knew the address of her former apartment, the names of her professors, the medications she had been prescribed for anxiety. 3 years earlier, all of it catalogued with the same precision he brought to every aspect of his life. During a quiet afternoon when other staff were attending a training seminar, Raymond found himself sharing details about Marian's death, the words emerging unprompted the first time he had spoken of it beyond essential information. It was sudden, a stroke, she was gone. Before the ambulance arrived, his voice unfamiliar to his own ears. 5 years I've lived alone since then. Eliza listened without interruption, her eyes holding his with unexpected compassion. What was she like, your wife? She finally asked. No one had asked him that question in years. The floodgates opened, memories pouring forth. Marian's love of classical music, her collection of ceramic birds, her inability to fold maps properly after using them, small human details he had locked away now flowing freely in the presence of the woman who watched him with genuine interest. The most personal conversation he had experienced in decades, leaving him simultaneously vulnerable and strangely unburdened. Raymond found himself adjusting schedules, ensuring maximum time with Eliza, arranging for her to stay in the administrative office when other inmates returned to cells, fabricating additional filing projects that required her specific attention. He monitored the cameras during shift changes, creating moments where they might speak privately, his professional demeanor maintained in the presence of others, yet increasingly softening. When they were alone, she told him of her hopes to return to nursing school. After release, her childhood in foster care, the series of mistakes that led to her arrest. He absorbed each detail, adding it to his growing catalogue of knowledge about her. Their conversations balanced on the knife edge, between appropriate workplace discussion and intimate personal exchange, the line between officer and inmate blurring with each passing day, the structure and order that had defined Raymond's existence for decades, slowly giving way to something chaotic, unpredictable, and increasingly necessary to his emotional survival. The first kiss happened during inventory week. The storage room behind the administrative office, free of camera coverage. Raymond had arranged for Eliza to help count medical supplies. The small space forcing proximity between them. He couldn't recall afterward who had moved first. Only the sudden dissolution of the barrier between them, her lips surprisingly soft against his, the transgression immediate and absolute. This was no longer a gray area but something that would end his career, possibly send him to prison himself. Yet the knowledge did nothing to diminish the electric current that ran through him. Raymond began collecting small objects connected to Eliza. A pen she had used, paperclips. She had straightened strands of her hair gathered from her desk, hidden in his apartment beneath his bed. These totems examined nightly with ritualistic devotion, sometimes pressing her handwritten notes to his face. Breathing deeply, searching for lingering scent, he created notebooks categorized by subject matter. One for conversations, another for expressions, recording with precision the exact angle of her eyebrows. When she concentrated, a third dedicated to reconstructing her life. Before prison, he wrote her name repeatedly on empty pages, sometimes filling entire sheets with nothing but Eliza in varying sizes. The prison's scheduling system became a tool for manipulation. He altered duty rosters, arranged for understaffing, created fictional filing projects requiring after-hours work, anything to maximize their time alone together. She responded with neither encouragement nor resistance. A neutrality Raymond interpreted as tacit acceptance, even love, reading profound meaning into her smallest gestures. A casual touch transformed in his mind to passionate declaration. You thinking about, he asked. During one afternoon alone together. Life after this, she replied. My release date is 14 months away, 2 months after your retirement date. He noted the possibility of their lives intersecting outside these walls, taking root in his mind with invasive tenacity. At home, Raymond researched locations for retirement, coastal towns, with good medical facilities, where Eliza might continue her nursing education. Walls covered with pictures, brochures stacked in towers. He plotted distances from the prison, calculated housing costs, studied climate patterns. A military campaign, planned with strategic precision. He identified a small town 3 hours north, with a community college offering nursing programs. 34 days remained. Until retirement, the countdown acquiring new significance as he started a separate savings account, setting aside money for her new beginning. Visualizing a shared life constructed entirely within his imagination. Officer Delgado's continued interest in Eliza triggered violent fantasies that disturbed even Raymond himself. When the younger officer brought her coffee one morning, Raymond's hand instinctively moved toward his baton. Caught himself. Inmate personal items require authorization. Delgado's confused expression met with Raymond's unflinching stare. But it's just coffee. The younger man protested. Protocol exists for a reason. Raymond responded. That afternoon he reassigned Eliza's security escort, changed routes to avoid Delgado's patrol area, limited other officers' access to the filing room. The possessiveness, both alarming and satisfying, a part of him, recognizing the irrationality while powerless to resist. Security measures designed to maintain order became obstacles to overcome. Raymond, who had once viewed protocols as sacrosanct, now evaluated each solely through the lens of how it might limit contact with Eliza. He created phantom maintenance issues in the surveillance system, ensuring periodic outages in strategic areas, falsified visitor logs when bringing her to restricted areas, requisitioned medical supplies that provided excuses for private consultations, each violation compounding the previous one. A cascade of compromises that would have horrified the man he had been 6 months earlier. Raymond's apartment transformed gradually from military precision to obsessive shrine pictures. Coastal towns pinned in symmetrical rows. Retirement community brochures stacked according to distance from nursing schools. Scale models of apartments they might share, furniture arranged and rearranged nightly. A calendar marking not only his retirement date but her release. 14 months late, articles about starting over after incarceration. Research on expunging criminal records, information about nursing program applications. His once sterile living space now dedicated entirely to an imagined future. His planning meetings with HR took on new significance as he calculated pension distributions with her needs factored into every equation. Warden Davis called Raymond into his office, 29 days before retirement. Annual security audit coming up, he said, staring at an open folder. We're reviewing all systems, especially camera coverage and entry logs. Raymond felt cold sweat break across his skin. Some inconsistencies have been flagged, particularly in the administrative section, documentation gaps in camera maintenance. Unusual scheduling patterns. Will need access to all logs, maintenance records, duty rosters for the past 6 months. Raymond maintained his exterior, mentally cataloging the numerous alterations, falsifications and manipulations that would be revealed. Your replacement needs to understand the systems you've established, Davis added, watching Raymond carefully. That night Raymond stayed late, systematically reviewing months of security logs, digits records, entry documentation, meticulously correcting discrepancies, rewriting histories covering tracks, dozens of violations that individually might be explained as clerical errors, but collectively formed an unmistakable pattern of deliberate manipulation. Eliza found him there, still working. Midnight. What are you doing? She asked, concerned by his dishevelment. Protecting us, he answered simply, the weight of that statement settling between them. Making our future possible. He continued, believing it even as some rational part of his mind recognized the dangerous delusion he had constructed. Nothing can separate us now, the conviction in his voice, masking the growing anxiety that perhaps she didn't share his vision of their future together. That perhaps the entire construction existed solely within his increasingly unstable mind. The discovery happened 23 days before retirement. Raymond arriving early to prepare the administrative office, a small wrapped package in his pocket. Today marked 6 months since Eliza's first day under his supervision, an anniversary significant only to him. He'd found a smooth river stone on his morning walk, painted it with meticulous care, blue swirls against black, a pattern that reminded him of her eyes. A gift both personal yet explainable if discovered. Moving through his morning routine, he noticed her desk drawer, partially open, a violation of his meticulously established protocols. Curious, he pulled it open further, discovering a hidden compartment beneath the standard issue paperwork inside a small leather-bound notebook, unlike anything available within prison walls. Raymond's pulse quickened as he flipped through pages of precise documentation, dates, times, locations of their encounters. His own words quoted verbatim, gifts, record, security camera adjustments noted with timestamp accuracy. A second section contained legal terminology,
Coercion under authority's psychological manipulation grounds for early release. Beneath these clinical notes was a letter addressed to the parole board, describing how a senior corrections officer had systematically manipulated, isolated and coerced an inmate into inappropriate relationship. The narrative constructed from truth, yet twisted to place all agency, all blame on Raymond. While positioning Eliza as victim, his hands trembled as he continued reading her lawyer's notes in the margin, suggesting this evidence could support not only early release but potential lawsuit against the prison system, possibly criminal charges against Raymond himself. Raymond sat immobile at her desk, evidence spread before him when Eliza entered the office. She froze, seeing what he'd discovered, his face drained of color. A small wrapped package, visible on his desk. Corner. The silence stretched between them. Finally he spoke, his voice unnaturally calm. "What is this?" She met his gaze directly, her eyes no longer soft but calculating. "Exactly what it appears to be. A contingency plan. We all need one, don't we?" Officer Mercer, her voice carried none of the warmth he'd convinced himself existed between them. "You understand self-preservation." Her calm betrayal more devastating than any angry confrontation would have been. "So everything, every conversation, every touch, it was all strategy." Raymond's voice barely audible. Her clinical response, cut deeper than rage ever could, would have been, "Of course it was. What did you imagine?" She gestured toward the small package on his desk. "That we had something real, that we would run away together. After my release. The fantasy you built around us was convenient." She continued, taking a seat across from him smoothly, transitioning to the role of composed analyst. "Your obsession made my time here easier, more comfortable, small luxuries, better assignments, protection. But surely you didn't actually believe a 25-year-old woman would choose a life with someone your age." He flinched at the casual cruelty you created. "An elaborate fiction, and I simply didn't correct you. The efficiency of your delusion served me well." She reached for the notebook. "Your retirement countdown was conveniently timed for my parole hearing. The evidence," she tapped the pages, "provides leverage either way." Her voice held something close to pity, as she regarded him, the great Raymond Mercer, undone by loneliness, so pathetic. "Really, the guards talk about you, you know, the robot. The rulebook. Now you'll be remembered differently." Raymond felt something break inside his mind. Meticulously constructed reality he'd built collapsing, its architecture crumbling against her cold assessment. The humiliation burning through his chest with physical pain. His vision narrowed to her face, now wearing an expression he'd never seen before, or perhaps had refused to see, the calculating eyes of someone who had played a long strategic game, using him as merely a piece on her board. "I loved you," he whispered, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. She laughed, then a genuine sound of amusement that shredded what remained of his dignity. "Love, is that what you call this obsession? This sick fantasy you built around a woman half your age, who never had a choice about your attention?" She stood, tucking the notebook into her waistband. "I'm taking this to my attorney visit tomorrow," she said. "Goodbye, Raymond, or should I call you Ray? Like your wife did. I know so much about you now and you know nothing about me." Later Raymond wouldn't remember crossing the space between them, wouldn't recall his hands closing around her throat, only the thundering in his ears as her eyes widened in genuine surprise. Perhaps the first honest reaction she'd ever shown him. He felt her nails digging his wrists, her attempts to speak, the way her body thrashed against his grip. His rational mind floating somewhere above the scene, observing with clinical detachment as 30 years of controlled discipline, restraint dissolved into primal rage. The pressure of his thumbs against her windpipe, the gradual weakening of her resistance. The moment her eyes dulled their calculation, replaced by simple animal panic, until finally she went limp beneath his hands. The transition from rage to horror was instantaneous. Raymond on his knees, cradling her body. "What have I done? What have I done?" The words a whisper, then a moan, then silence, his mind separating from emotion, shutting down all feeling as training took over. He checked for pulse, finding none, security protocols activating automatically. He mentally mapped camera coverage, entrances, exits, staff rotations with mechanical precision. He gathered the notebook, her documentation of his obsession, the small painted stone still wrapped on his desk, the physical evidence of his destruction. Raymond Mercer, senior corrections officer, 29 days from retirement now, methodically planning how to cover up murder, his hands steady, his breathing, regular, decades of discipline, reasserting themselves as he prepared to commit the final violation of everything he had once held sacred.
The transformation of the administrative office took 47 minutes. Raymond, working with mechanical precision to recreate what his mind classified as a believable suicide, he positioned her body in the supply closet, fashioned a noose from computer cabling, arranged an overturned chair as evidence of her final moments, the staging meticulous in its attention to detail, each element placed with the same exacting standards he had applied to every aspect of his career. He removed the notebook, all evidence of their connection, planted a falsified suicide note using paper from her desk, mimicking her handwriting with practiced skill, a note expressing despair over denied parole appeal, hopelessness about future prospects, carefully generic yet personal enough to withstand cursory examination. He wiped surfaces, removed fingerprints, adjusted camera logs to show maintenance outage. The critical time window, 30 years of security expertise now deployed to conceal rather than protect. His discovery of the body happened during morning rounds. Officer Jenkins witnessing his performance of shock trauma, Raymond's voice steady but strained as he called for emergency response. His decades of respected service creating immediate credibility, as he described finding her during routine office opening. Jenkins saw a senior officer maintaining composure through tragedy, not a man presenting elaborate fiction. The first responders, medical examiner, warden all moved through procedures with somber efficiency, Raymond answering questions with appropriate distress details, consistent timeline, coherent explanation beyond reproach. A respected officer 22 days from retirement encountering tragedy, his narrative accepted without significant questioning by colleagues who had trusted his judgment for decades. The routine investigation initiated as protocol required, witness statements collected, scene documented, cause of death preliminarily ruled suicide pending final medical examination. Raymond returned home that evening, showered for 23 minutes instead of ritualistic 7, scrubbing her touch from his skin. Dr. Sarah Chen, the county medical examiner, studied the autopsy results with growing confusion. The ligature marks inconsistent with self-inflicted hanging, speaking with Warden Davis in his office. 2 days later, her finger tracing photograph laid across his desk. These marks indicate manual strangulation before hanging was staged. Strangulation requires significant force applied directly to the throat, typically leaving distinctive bruising patterns. Davis looked up at her sharply. "You're suggesting homicide, not suicide," she nodded. "The hyoid bone fracture pattern is inconsistent with hanging, but consistent with manual strangulation. Additionally, rigor mortis timing contradicts the reported discovery timeline by approximately 4 hours." Davis staring at the evidence, the implication unavoidable: someone had killed Eliza Chambers, staged it as suicide and falsified the timeline, with the administrative office having restricted access, limited staff presence. A horrifying possibility emerged. Raymond sensed the shift, subtle changes in how colleagues regarded him, sideways glances, hushed conversations that stopped when he approached, increased security presence in the administrative section. The warden's request for secondary statement about discovery timeline felt ominous, as did the forensic team's return to re-examine the scene. His carefully constructed narrative beginning to unravel, threads pulled by medical science, irrefutable evidence challenging meticulous fiction. Detective Morris from State Police Homicide Division arrived, conducting interviews focusing on access patterns, relationships, staff-inmate interactions. Raymond maintained his composure, the military discipline that had defined his existence now only shield against mounting evidence. The detective's questions increasingly specific about camera maintenance logs, scheduling anomalies, relationship with the deceased. Raymond's answers becoming more elaborate, each new lie requiring additional fabrications to support previous deceptions, structure weakening under its own complexity. The search warrant execution at Raymond's apartment revealed what remained of his obsession. The detective's flashlight illuminating walls covered with coastal town images, calendar marking both retirement and Eliza's release date, notebooks filled with detailed documentation of her every gesture, conversation, preference. The collection of objects connected to her hidden beneath his bed. The painted stone still wrapped in his pocket when arrested, most damning. The original security logs showing systematic manipulation of schedules, cameras, access records. The evidence of premeditation planning, the very precision that had defined Raymond's career, now providing prosecutors with methodically documented evidence of his decline into obsession. The narrative constructed not by investigators but by Raymond himself in his meticulous record-keeping. Detective Morris, staring at the apartment walls, spoke quietly into his radio. "We need psychiatric evaluation with the subject. He's constructed an entire alternate reality." Raymond's confession emerged not as emotional breakdown but as logical conclusion. The case against him constructed from his own records, his own habits, his own precision. Once presented with irrefutable evidence, the ultimate systems analyst acknowledged system failure. "I never intended her death," he explained to Detective Morris, voice devoid of emotion. "I loved her, she was using me, manipulating me. Had documented everything, leverage." His description of events clinical, detached, as if discussing security protocol breach rather than murder. The detective noted the disconnection between Raymond's actions and emotional understanding. Raymond continued, "I followed procedure afterward, isn't that strange? 30 years of training just activated automatically." He looked genuinely puzzled by his own behavior. The capacity for compartmentalization that had made him an exemplary officer, enabling both efficient murder and its methodical concealment. Coastal State Penitentiary housed Raymond Mercer in administrative segregation. Status as former corrections officer, making general population placement unsafe. Cell 300. Measured 8 feet by 10 feet, concrete walls, institutional green steel fixtures. The same environment he had overseen for decades now. Containing him, retirement date passing unmarked by anyone but Raymond. Continued his ritual X on a small calendar permitted among his limited possessions. He arranged his few belongings with familiar precision. Toothbrush aligned precisely parallel to sink edge, blanket folded with military corners, books stacked according to height. The same patterns that had defined his apartment now recreated within these narrower confines. The guard assigned to his section observed his behavior with professional interest. The legendary Raymond Mercer, still maintaining standards, still adhering to protocol even as prisoner, rather than keeper. Officer Jenkins, delivering meal tray, paused at Raymond's cell, noting the older man sitting precisely centered on his bunk. Staring at the calendar on his wall, the date circled would have marked 1 year since Eliza's release. "It's Tuesday," Raymond said without looking up. "She would have graduated nursing program by now." His fingers buttons on the concrete wall. Invisible designs, meaningful only to him. Jenkins said nothing, recognizing the continuation of delusion that had destroyed a respected career, ended one life, imprisoned another. The younger officer moved on, leaving Raymond arranging his food tray items with meticulous attention. The mashed potatoes precisely centered, the bread aligned at perfect right angle to tray edge. Maintaining order within chaos. Finding structure within confinement, his existence reduced, yet in many ways unchanged. Still counting days, still following routines, still living within carefully constructed patterns. The walls different yet familiar. The man himself unchanged in his fundamental nature. A systems analyst to the end, practicing precision in a world confined to 8 by 10 feet, a life defined by boundaries now contained within the ultimate boundary of